Last March, Task and Purpose published an article with Brigadier General Phil Kinnery in it, where he was talking about he wants to get the soldiers' combat weight down to 55 pounds. Now, I don't know if he meant 55 pounds as their fighting weight, 55 pounds total, but that now brings up the conversation of where our fighting weight or our combat weight is right now with the fighting soldier. And I can tell you here in 2025, the modern combat soldier is carrying more weight now than ever before, I think, in the history of warfare. So in this video, I want to talk about combat weights, what it really looks like, what is the true fighting weight, and getting down to this 55-pound number. Is it feasible? Is it really practical? So let's get into combat weight right now. So before we talk about this 55-pound goal of a combat weight, let's go back in history and look at some fighting loadouts, starting off going all the way back to Roman times under General Marius. He had the combat loads of the average Roman soldier on the march of about 85 to 90 pounds, and that's with a full loadout. But their fighting loadout, depending on the type of armor they were wearing, if it was chainmail or their segmented plate armor like here in the photo, then their fighting weight was between 33 and 45 pounds. And that's with their armor, helmet, their shield, their gladius sword, and their pilum spear. About 45 pounds as their fighting weight. Now, fast forward to the American soldier in World War II. The average load for a rifleman that's armed with an M1 Garand with a basic load of ammo, their web gear, which consists of a canteen, a haversack, of course, their pistol belt, bayonet, entrenching tool, let's say 2 hand grenades, 1 smoke grenade, and a few days worth of sea rations, well, their fighting loadout was 45 pounds. And that's with no special equipment, no extra ammo for other weapon systems, just the walking around weight of a rifleman. Now we fast forward again to Vietnam and looking at that first generation Alice gear. Again, looking at a Vietnam era rifleman armed with an M16A1 with about 200 rounds of ammo. The combat weight is going to drop about 5 pounds to 40 pounds just based on the lighter rifle and the ammunition being lighter. But again, if we arm that Vietnam soldier the same way, their web gear, canteens, an entrenching tool, a bayonet, 2 hand grenades, 1 smoke grenade, and that, of course, that M16A1 with about 200 rounds of ammo, the fighting weight is about 40 pounds. Now, let's fast forward to my time in GWAT, looking at the gear I carried. My plate carrier with helmet, with my M4A1 with a VCOG on there, I carried 8 magazines. I had my nods on me at all times, with a war belt with an M9 Beretta with about 3 extra mags and 1 liter of water on me. My fighting loadout was just right around 53 pounds. And for my body armor, I had that, of course, an IFAK on there, and I only wore hard front and back plates. I wore soft side plates, but I didn't wear side soft armor. So conservatively, I was about 53 pounds walking around, again, with no special equipment. Now, that 53 pounds was my walking around, my true fighting weight. No extra packs or anything like that. Now we start adding a pack with special equipment and provisions to sustain you through the mission. Well, then you can bump that up quite significantly. If we look at Vietnam, you can tack on another 30, 40 pounds. So those guys back in the Nam were humping around about 85 pounds in those medium Alice packs. And the pack I used, which was a source pack, which I have a separate video on, well, conservatively, I was probably carrying an extra 35 pounds in weight. A lot of it was in water, but I carried extra ammo for any crew serves we had on the team. And of course, extra batteries and things like that, just for a multi-day operation. So if we add that already to my 53 pounds, well, then I'm well above 80 pounds walking around in full kit with that pack. Now, if we just talk about your modern infantrymen, if we add up their load, and this is a conservative estimate, I haven't even talked about the weight of what a uniform weighs and boots and other small items like multi-tools or knives or things in your pocket, notepads and all that, or any extra batteries for any of the electronic stuff you have to carry. If we add up what the modern soldiers carrying, talk about their plates and plate carrier, modern soldiers, they wear front and back hard plates and hard side plates, plus soft armored inserts. You have their vest, you have IFAK, you have their radio, you have their helmet. If you arm them with a modern M7 rifle with a basic load of 7 magazines, which carries half the ammo of your modern M4, a little bit of water, and again, 2 grenades, 1 smoke, just the bare minimum, you're looking again about 53, 54 pounds for a conservative estimate. And that's just walking around, no special equipment. Well, one could say, well, Jeff, looks like the general is right. They got the fighting weight down to 55 pounds already. But that is not a true fighting loadout. That is just the basic issue for a rifleman, and that's not even a full issue. There's only been a few periods in American military history where the infantryman has been armed with a full fighting loadout, talking the invasion of Panama, maybe the invasion of Grenada, the initial invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. They still weren't given full, true fighting loadouts. I know in Panama they did a fighting loadout because I know one guy who jumped into Panama. And what do I mean by fighting loadout? You're going to be issued all the supporting stuff the platoon needs and munitions to support the platoons and company weapons. So as an infantryman, you're going to be expected to carry an AT-4 or a more modern Carl Gustaf round. Now that Carl Gustafs are at least with airborne units, I know that. You're going to be expected to carry extra belt-fed ammo, so a 200-round belt for the 240s in your platoon. And in the airborne infantry, and I did this back when I was in 3rd and 325, every soldier is going to be expected to carry a 60-millimeter mortar round on them to support the company's mortars. Somebody has to carry that ammo. So when you start factoring in all that, plus claymores, and there's only been a few instances where claymores have been issued, but you can be expected to carry probably an extra 20 pounds in munitions just to support, again, the platoon and company's weapons. So now that 53, 54 pound rifleman is really sitting around at least 70 pounds just in munitions alone. When we're talking flares and smokes, again, all this other stuff I haven't previously listed. And it gets worse. If you're a machine gunner or a saw gunner, if you look at you replace that M7 rifle with, say, an M240 and just a 200-round belt of ammo, then you're over 70 pounds walking around weight. If you're a saw gunner and you're walking with the bare minimum of at least 3 drums, a total of 600 rounds, again, you're over 70 pounds just walking around. So we're over that 55-pound weight number. And in that task and purpose article, the general did not specify if they're trying to get down to a 55-pound fighting weight or 55 pounds overall, because the Army requirement, I think it has not changed when they go out and they do rucksack marches, they're using only a 35-pound rucksack. So is it a total weight they're trying to get down to 55 pounds, or is it just fighting weight? They leave that kind of open. And as you can see, with just carrying the bare minimums, we're already well past or right at that 55 pounds. And if we're carrying a true combat load, which as a rifleman, as any sort of combat MOS, you're going to have to carry supporting munitions, then again, we're well over that 55-pound mark, and we're averaging around probably 70 pounds per soldier. The load I carried in Afghanistan was really light compared to your average infantryman. I reached out on my subreddit, which is Modern Tac Shooting, and I asked soldiers and former soldiers what they were carrying in Afghanistan as far as weight. And a lot of them were saying easily over 100 pounds once they included their pack. 100, 120 pounds easy. There's a rule you don't want to violate. You don't want to burden the soldier with more than 1/3 their body weight. But when you're talking 120-pound pack and the average soldier maybe weighs 175 pounds, well, that's been easily violated. So again, I'd like to know what General Kinnery is talking about, getting the fighting load down to 55 pounds, or are we looking at total weight that they're carrying around? Now, of course, the American military, between every conflict, has studied the fighting loadouts that soldiers have carried into combat. One really good resource is this book right here, The Soldier's Load and the Mobility of a Nation. This is published by the Marine Corps way back in 1950, looking back at really evaluating the weights and the munitions and things like that soldiers carried into combat. And the author of this book comes to a few different conclusions, the first being the magic number of 45 pounds. And once you cross that 45-pound threshold, it really starts to degrade the effectiveness of the soldier. In fact, the author states that if he had 5,000 men that were well rested in carrying the minimal amount of weight versus 15,000 obscenely overburdened soldiers, he would take the 5,000 as they would be a more effective fighting force. They would have more strength to win the fight. So I think that's pretty telling. But this book also goes into another subject, which I want to cover kind of really in detail why we end up being so overloaded, and that is the fears of the command put on the fighting soldier. So, in the chapter Fears of the Staff, the author explains how soldiers basically ended up being super overburdened during all the different beach assaults in World War II. We're talking D Day and all the amphibious landings that the Marines made in the Pacific fight. So basically, the way it works is this: the average soldier knows what they need to carry going into harm's way. They know, hey, I need my rifle, I need a certain amount of ammunition, I need some water. The soldier knows the feasible amount of weight they can carry and still have the strength to fight. The problem arises that with each level of command over that individual soldier, the command is going to superimpose their fears and their what ifs upon that soldier. And this fears and what ifs manifests itself in terms of weight, in terms of gear. So at the platoon level, yes, there's going to be some platoon items that soldiers going to have to carry, some munitions to support the platoon weapons, again, like maybe some belt-fed ammo. At the company level, it's going to repeat itself. Hey, you're going to need to carry stuff that might meet the company's objective, meet the company's needs. Also, the what ifs are going to start coming out at the company level. Hey, what if we run into this? Then the soldiers need to carry that. Then it repeats again at the battalion level. The battalion staff is going to be looking at it and being, hey, what if these soldiers run into this problem, or the mission lasts this long, or the enemy has this, and the soldiers are going to need to carry this also. And it repeats at every level. So it goes from battalion to brigade up to division, however many levels of command there are. They superimpose their what ifs and fears, and that comes out in terms of gear being carried. And I saw this play out during GWAT to a certain extent. I don't know if you remember or you ever heard of the thing called the DAPS, and I'm not going to go through the acronym. Here's a photo of it right here. It's basically a protection for the upper arms, and I believe it was designed to help gunners in the turret to offer them more protection, because the number one threat during early GWAT was, of course, IEDs. And turret gunners are they have no need to go out and about and chase down the enemy. They're mainly going to sit there and man their gun in the turret. So, hey, why not armor up those soldiers with some extra protection? The problem is most commands were like, hey, that's more protection, more armor for the soldier. Let's make all soldiers wear it. So you had a period of about 2 or 3 years in GWAT where you basically had tactical turtles. You had soldiers with these full vests, front plates, side plates, soft armor all the way around. And then you had, of course, the DAPS protection, groin protection, totally armored up. Armor was chosen over mobility and mission effectiveness. And this comes from fears in the command. They don't want to take casualties. So the average soldier paid the price for that in weight, and it really cut down on the individual soldier's effectiveness. Good idea. And one thing is, anytime I hear that, hey, this piece of kit offers interchangeability, you can configure it for the mission. Anytime something like that is sold in the Army, it usually means that at some level beyond the soldier level, usually up in the battalion level, they're going to set things up one way, regardless of what the duties of the soldier are, and everybody's going to be dressed right dressed. The Army loves uniformity over practicality. So anytime they say, hey, this is modular and you can configure it for the mission, usually means it will be set up one way and everybody has to set it up that way, again, regardless of the job or what weapon systems they're carrying. Now, that is one benefit of being in Special Forces, especially serving as a team sergeant. We weren't overburdened with gear. We did get to pick the gear we wanted to carry on a mission and the amount of stuff we needed to carry to solve the tactical problems we were facing. But I did see fears of the staff manifest itself in other ways within Special Forces. And I know most who served during GWAT in Special Forces, especially in Afghanistan, can relate to what I'm going to say next. How did we see fears of the staff, those, hey, what if this happens or what if that happens, manifest itself in Special Forces? Well, it came in the version of the CONOP. And believe it or not, when we first started to do direct action missions, and we're talking late 2003, early 2004, to do a direct action mission, go assault a target, go assault a building, it took a 5-page con-op. Basically, you had your task org, you had your concept of the operation, you had your commo slide, you had a medevac slide, and maybe a supporting slide if you had air assets or things like that. It took a 5-page con-op to leave the wire and go do a mission. Now, fast forward to 2012, it would take a 60-page con-op to go out and actually conduct a mission, which is ludicrous. Don't forget, they send you to Afghanistan to go do your special forces thing, to go outside the wire, to pacify the area and try to instill a working society again. You have to go out and do missions to do that. But once you get to Afghanistan, you then have to write a 60-page PowerPoint justifying to the chain of command why they should actually let you outside the wire and do your mission to begin with. It was ludicrous. And that was all based on the fears of the chain of command. They're trying to mitigate as much risk as possible by doing these, making us do these super long con ops in 60-page formats. And of course, as soon as the first bullet is fired and passes by your head on the mission, all that goes out the window. So again, we were just trying to appease the fears of our chain of command. So it did manifest itself again, the fears of the staff. It just came out in a different way. Hopefully that's being rectified. Hopefully these 60-page con ops, which is ludicrous, is fading away within SOF because it truly hurt our mission effectiveness and our capabilities to actually go out and do our job. There was no reason for it. It was just plain silly. And again, that's fears of the staff. Now, getting back to World War II, what did all these soldiers do with all that extra gear they were forced to carry based on the fears and the what ifs by their staffs above them? Well, what they find in the book is that most of this gear never makes it past the beachhead. It's kind of portrayed a little bit in the movie Saving Private Ryan. You see them once they hit the beach, they're ditching gas masks and some other unneeded gear. But that's true based on real life. They especially looked at all the beach landings made by the Marines. And you can see in some of these photos, they're already stripping off and they're leaving their packs and all this other stuff on the beach. And when they make their way inland, they're fighting with just basically their main weapon and their belts of munitions. They're not carrying any sort of packs at all. They're fighting with the stuff that the individual soldier knows what they can manage and carry on them actually in the fight. So, how do we get to this 55-pound weight mark for a fighting loadout? Well, the easy thing would be to just drop body armor, but of course that's not going to happen. The American military is risk adverse and they are casualty adverse. And if you give the American military leadership the choice of, hey, extra mobility and dexterity for the troops, or armor them up in hopes of protecting them against all threats, they're always going to choose armoring them up. But the technology is there to make armor lighter. And the American military, to their credit, they have played around during the GWAT years with lightening the armor load. This photo right here is some soldiers rocking some simple plate carriers. I know the Marines have played around with different plate carriers. In fact, and I'm not going to get political or anything like that, in photos of the Marines in LA, they're wearing the latest plate carrier, which I believe came out just in the last few years. And this Marine right here actually has an even slimmer looking plate carrier. And for the American Army, I believe it was back in 2019, they played around with issuing thousands of plate carriers forward in Afghanistan. So frontline units with their full vests, once they got to Afghanistan, they could get a lighter weight plate carrier. But I don't think it was very popular with the troops. And in fact, I never saw them issued out a lot. I remember seeing a lot of them at Bagram in supply warehouses, but I never saw these plate carriers right here issued in any sort of large numbers. And armor itself is actually pretty heavy. Your level 4 front and back plates still weigh about 7 pounds apiece, and your side plates are about 2 pounds apiece. And that's not including the soft armor backers that soldiers are required to wear. But the technology is there for lighter plates. 1 pound level 4 plates do exist. My son who serves in JSOC, I know he has them, and yes, they're super sweet, and they're truly only about a pound apiece. But I would say they're cost prohibitive right now for the Army just to outfit every soldier with these 1 pound plates. And let's face it, The Army would rather spend money on a hard item than gear for soldiers. And what do I mean by that? If it comes to buying a brand new Abrams tank or buying some new armor for soldiers, they'd rather have a new tank. And so if we just put that money of one Abrams tank towards lighter armor, I bet you we could outfit at least a division with the most up-to-date lightweight plates. But again, the Army would rather see a hard item. They'd rather see a new missile or a new tank or cannon or something like that. I think once the technology catches up to a lower price and it becomes more price feasible, then we'll see lighter plates in the future for soldiers. The only other thing I can see that the Army can do to lighten the load on the combat soldier is end micromanagement. It's common practice in frontline military units that what they wear and how they wear it and how much gear they carry is set at the battalion level in battalion SOPs. Why are staff people still deciding on what should be carried? It ought to be down at the platoon level. That platoon leader and platoon sergeant, they know what their men need to carry. And more importantly, they know how far their men can go. They know the endurance level of their men and things like that. So they ought to be able to decide, hey, who's going to carry what, how much gear they're going to carry to meet mission success. It shouldn't be at the company level or battalion level in these SOPs. But the Army loves uniformity. They'd rather see soldiers' gear in uniformity as opposed to being super practical. That's just how they think, and that's pretty unfortunate. So that's really, I think, the two solutions that are on the table right now. Invest in lighter weight body armor. Gear is not going to change as far as munitions. Again, a true fighting loadout, you're going to have to carry extra munitions for the platoon and company sized weapons. There's no way around it. But we can at least invest in lighter body armor for soldiers, truly lighter body armor. And again, end the micromanagement. Let leaders at the lowest level decide what gear is going to be carried and how it's configured. That's my take on it. But as always, hopefully you found this video informative and entertaining. And as always, I'm Jeff Gerwich. Thanks for watching.